Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to tell you something. We have a Patreon that you can sign up to. It's called patreon.com/somelaugh.
Don't help him.
You can sign up from as little as £3 a month. You get loads of bonus stuff for that. An extra episode every 2 weeks. All the live shows that we've done. Pavilion, London, Edinburgh, Glee, Stand, all that. You've got access to tickets early. You've got... what else do you have, boys?
Well, it sounds like it's been written by AI.
Performed by Roger. But just know that you'd be supporting us. We can pay an editor. It keeps us ticking over.
Yes.
Not losing money.
It very much does.
We can keep affording to do the podcast and provide you all your free content as well.
Yes, keeps us going, keeps us growing. You do get first dibs on live show tickets as well, both for Some Laugh Lives we made in future, as well as any stand-up shows and stuff that we do both individually and as the podcast.
We've had some of the top comedians in the UK on those live stand-up
That is
nights.
true.
That is no bullshit.
That's
That
no
is
word of a lie.
No cap.
Can I say some of the names that we've had on?
I mean, you can see it on
you want.
Instagram if you want, but of course, why not? Rhyme them off.
We've had Kevin Bridges. We've had Larry Dean. We've had Josie Long.
You're going to really need to turn up your volume here. This is for some reason Steve's decided to start.
You can see the panic in Steve's eyes. He's not sure where to draw the line of what he considers a top stand-up.
It's a secret.
Yeah.
We've had me. We've had Jennings now.
Yeah.
You know,
good
the
stuff.
list is endless.
Yeah. And well, it's it's ended,
But
but
it is, it's not endless, but
we've had some great, it's always a great night when we do those ones, and you never know who's going to turn up. So the first dibs for tickets for those is on the Patreon, as well as the extra episodes and all the previous footage from the live shows, which, by the way, I would say is fucking high quality footage. You know, we've filmed it very well, particularly obviously the pavilion, the behind the scenes at the Fringe and all that kind of stuff. So please do enjoy the content over there, and hopefully see you there. Aside from that, enjoy today's episode.
Enjoy the episode, guys.
Welcome to the Some Laugh podcast.
it could be like, oh, that was some laugh, or there was just some laughs.
Well, no promising all laugh.
No, there's going to be some.
It's some laugh. Welcome to the show, Matt. For people that are on the Patreon will know that this is your second appearance because you joined us for Some Laugh Live in London.
Live.
Last
Have you
year.
done? You've done a few live.
Done a few, yeah. Done the Pavilion in March.
Oh, why?
Is this the first time we've had a guest on in different countries?
Well, you could also
Chloe,
count
but,
Chloe,
yeah,
who
true.
was on that night as well, who's done it in Scotland. and-
Ironically,
yeah.
you've got one of the biggest carbon footprints of all of our guests, technically, in terms of travelling to do the podcast.
Oh, it depends. Probably, although I got I've only got trains and then walked for 35 minutes to get here.
Yeah, that was
fair enough,
very.
I didn't take a taxi, so probably somebody that took a taxi by themselves a fair distance would be worse than me.
See, for you trying to kind of keep the carbon footprint down, is it sort of like the equivalent of like getting your steps in? You're trying to get your footprint smaller all the time.
Aye, you're trying to get it small all the time, and also you're just sort of like, when somebody's like, "Do you want to get a taxi?" I'm just like, I'll just walk. It's fine. If there's an option to do it, and there's not like a time constraint, I'm just like
Walking the walk and talking the talk.
literally walking the walk. We should give the context of what I actually do.
Yes.
before.
Please, yeah.
Otherwise, that doesn't make sense. So I'm a climate change lecturer and a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, and you are
That-
trying to avert climate change rather than deny it.
Yeah, I'm on the side of getting rid of the
Of the
climate,
planet.
stopping
Yeah.
the climate change happening
Yes.
rather than
Just to be absolutely clear.
Yeah. Yes, and we talked about it at the live.
A wee bit. But as
Some
you
laugh
did sort of point out, it was a Saturday night, and we soon realised a thing that you probably come into contact with a lot, that it is hard to tell people
Absolutely.
how fucked the planet is
What I would
live on stage.
What I would suggest is always ease in. So even just now, I would suggest we just chat for 20 minutes, and then we'll
circle
and then we'll
back to
get
how we're
around to
fucked.
that when we're like everybody's involved,
Absolutely.
sort of committed enough to be like, okay, right, I'm going to
It's
set
like
up my
a
stake
rowdy
here.
club gig. We've got to win the audience over
Exactly.
first before
Yeah,
we do the more
basically.
interesting stuff.
But isn't the whole problem with climate change is we're not dealing with it immediately, Matt? We need action now.
It takes time, doesn't it?
So obviously, because we know you through the comedy circuit and obviously
Yes.
and all of that for years before you were doing. So you kind of mixed your day job of like doing stuff about the climate and all that with obviously stand up. Because I remember when you used to have bits about Sir Trevor McDonald and you were party poppers and all the rest of it.
Well, I used to do stand up like you guys, actual jokes about cheery subjects and fun things. And I did that for about 8 years and then wrote a show about climate change, and then people started paying me more money to do that. And I was like, cool, I'll just do that then.
But you you'd studied it and you were
I'd already been
field.
working on climate change for like 9 years at that point in time. So, and
it
also
wasn't
made
a cynical
No,
career
it was
move.
definitely not a cynical career move. And it made my life much easier because before that it was very much like they were two separate things all the time. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, the research helps the comedy and the comedy kind of helps the
Absolutely.
research. So it made my life a bit easier. But the last time we saw each other was in Germany
That was right, yeah.
about 3 months ago.
The most drunk night of the whole
Night,
time we were there though.
Fucking hell.
And then I saw you two on the last night though. After that, we were there that night. With
That's right.
Stevie,
Oh, aye.
And then I saw you two in the very last.
Yeah, I was sitting with your
dying
dad. I was sitting with your dad in that last
You were.
game of the Euros
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Scotland when we went out.
Mark
But-
and my
Blur to
dad
me,
hung
that.
out for 90 minutes during the Euros.
But see
I
that
was sitting
night.
next to a guy that lives in Dubai and works in oil. I didn't actually get onto the subject of climate change.
So I should tell. So we went out after the
The Switzerland game.
so we all watched the Switzerland game together
At the fan
in the
zone.
fan
in
zone.
the fan zone, which
In
I joined.
Cologne.
I was very excited about that because I hadn't. You'd already been there for a bit.
Aye, we'd
Yeah.
been there since Munich.
You
yeah.
were
That was
a
my
real
first.
like a impact sub, like a fresh burst of energy, some
aye.
legs,
I had loads of energy at that point in time.
and enthusiasm, and also you're a long time dyed in the wool Tartan Army man.
Yes.
Yes, no,
My-
us, we were casuals.
Us
Jumping on the
plastic
bandwagon.
No. Well, my first Scotland match was that I can remember. I genuinely do have a memory, just like a photograph in my head of it. Was Scotland versus the USSR.
Wow. Now you're going back.
I think it was at Ibrox in like 1990 or 91. I don't remember anything apart from it like being like a 5 or a 6 year old boy and being like, and it was really dark and thinking, well, it's really dark. I'm not normally outside when it's this dark and being really high up and being like, this is really high. That's all I can remember.
Aye.
Sensory overload.
Yeah.
It's a lot when you're a kid going to a game.
It is
That's
a bit
overwhelming,
intense.
isn't
I went to one when I was about 5 and I just remember thinking it was so noisy and I had a Freddo. And that was the Freddo was my only source of solace from the craziness
Well, that's,
around
yeah,
me.
you sort of need something to zone out and just concentrate on.
You do, absolutely.
But after that Switzerland match, I don't think I told you the story of the next morning.
Did you not have some crazy travel thing?
Did I tell you?
What was it?
So I woke up. I left you. I don't know when.
It was a big
I left
night.
you. It was a big night.
That was the most hungover I was.
Oh my God.
Did we tell you about the next day in our Airbnb?
I don't think so.
We were staying in an Airbnb with this
But an
lovely woman.
avuncular sort of Greek mum Airbnb who thought we were like her 3 Scottish sons and she was
Nice.
looking after us and
Done a
she
washing.
thought you were going to die. She was doing
I
her
was-
washing and she was giving him paracetamol. And,
I thought she at one point she was going to give me her chemotherapy tablet.
no,
she said to
that
me.
was lost in translation.
I'm like, what? I'm not a bit. But I was like literally sitting. You took a picture of me. I'm sitting.
I've got a
sitting on the
great picture of
couch
him
with
with a
my head,
hoodie
my
on
hands like
dying.
this.
This Greek woman like pleading with you.
Because the thing is, and we've got to shout out these boys because we met a couple of listeners that night when we were watching the game, and
aye.
but they were just buying us drinks all night, so we
Yeah.
ended up absolutely fucked, didn't we?
Aye.
I remember you coming back with shots at one point and being
Yeah.
like, this is
I
a
remember
good
seeing
idea.
you lying on the floor in that pub thinking that is one of the nation's leading climate change experts. Punching the air with a kilt on lying on the
Celebrating a
floor.
1-1 draw.
It was great. I mean, that was a high watermark
It
of
really
the
was.
tournament. To be
It
fair.
was. Little did we know.
You know. So what did you have to do the next day?
So the next morning, I had to get to Nuremberg by myself. And I woke up and my brother had left and his mate had left. And
You're
they'd-
not walking that, are you?
No. And I woke, so I got up, left, and I was like, one of those ones where I woke up, I'm by myself now in a, like somewhere, in this hotel. I don't know if it was a hotel or some horrible apartment. I was like, right, I need to leave. I've got like 10 minutes to leave. Got out the door, walked up the road, text Richard Gadd, because we'd seen him in the
On the
It's
telly,
on the telly,
it was
yeah,
Theodora
yeah.
Snyder.
And you'd started out with Gad, didn't you, back in the day? In this comedy circuit?
Yeah. So that was, and I recognised his mate on the screen before I recognised him.
Did
So I was
you?
like, that's good. So I texted him and was like, what, are you in Cologne? And was kind of back and forth with him. And then I got to, but I remember being like, I am so hungover at this point in time.
Yeah.
I met up with my dad and my dad's mate, who you met. And all of a sudden, my dad's mate, so they're there in this coffee shop, and they said, "Oh, come and meet us." And my dad's mate goes, "This is June's pen pal." I'm like, "What? This is what his wife's June. This is June's pen
June?
pal, Agatha or something." And I'm like, what are you fucking talking about? I'm so hungover and so confused. And then he's like explaining how his wife had a pen pal from Cologne back in the day, and like they were meeting up. And I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm like, any other time I'd be like, oh, that's like being pleasant and stuff. And I was like, I just need to walk away from this situation. And then he was away. He went away with her, and apparently lots of like she wanted to like get a picture taken with him and stuff and all this stuff. And then all the Scotland fans thought that he was like they were together, like he was, you know what I mean? All that sort of stuff was happening.
Yeah.
And I left and was like, right, I need to get this train. My dad and his mate were going to Nuremberg as well, but they'd booked a train like months in advance, so they were on some other train. So I'll leave them. They're supposed to be going and getting some train, and I'm now by myself. And then I walked up and I was like, right, my train's in like 20 minutes or something like that. And I looked at the board and was like, it's not on the board. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm checking my phone again and was like, I'm not at the right station.
Yeah.
I need to get to some other station in Cologne in the next like 15 minutes. Ask some information desk. There's another couple of Scotland fans that have done the exact same thing, and the guy's like, let's jump in a taxi, and I was like, I'm not getting in a taxi, I'm going to be sick if I get in a taxi.
Right, this isn't a moral stance at this point.
No, yeah. Well, it just happened to be fine. And then I managed to I make it by like 2 or 3 minutes, and I get this train that's going to Nuremberg, and I get on, and then there's like, it's one of those carriages where it's like, you know, like in the films where it's like a side-on carriage where you walk, there's a wee door.
Yeah.
So you're in the carriage, but each thing has got its own wee compartment, and you go in and there's like a couple of seats on either side.
So an Agatha Christie can take place.
Yeah. So I'm quite excited, but I'm also like, I need to be by myself, and it's just me and this old German woman sitting across from me, who then starts trying to make conversation, and I'm just like, I'm genuinely going to puke at any like. So I spend probably about an hour and a half trying not to be sick on an old woman, and then go to the toilet, and then I start properly puking in the toilet for a bit, come back, then this old woman's like, could you help? We're stopping at Frankfurt airport or something. She's like, could you help me off with my bags? And I was like, at this point in time, I'll do anything, but I can't even look. I can't look her in the eyes, because if I sort of do anything that isn't just looking at the phone, I'm going to be sick again. And I help her off, and then like put her bags off, and then my dad and his mate are already at Frankfurt airport coming on my train that's going to Nuremberg. I'm sorry, I had to fucking give up at this point in time. And then they just sat and slagged me off for the next 2 hours or something.
Hell.
It's the longest day of my life. And then I got there and ate some sausages.
You were alright?
Oh, and then I felt a bit better. Yeah.
Stevie was nearly sick in that Greek woman's car, remember?
That's right,
So head out the window like a dog.
And then because we had to go to Essen that day or something, but all the trains, as everybody
minutes.
learned, all the trains in Germany were fucked.
And every train seemed to go through Frankfurt Airport. We saw that place about 10 times.
I know. And then do you know what? I went to Frankfurt for the last few days because we'd booked the flights literally after coming back for that live show that you were on. We booked
on a sweaty train. Yeah.
And then so I was like, well, I've got my flight back because you all left early, and I thought, well, I'm just going to get my original flight, and then I'd left my Airbnb, getting the train to the airport, and then your flight's been cancelled. Like, you're fucking kidding me on.
Oh no!
But luckily there was one going back that same night, and I got it direct. I was like, it's a nightmare. But it's just never easy, is it? But honestly, every train was about an hour late or something, at least in Germany, wasn't it? Like going from place to place.
It was. And then after when I came back, I remember like we'd spent like a day in Nuremberg. Like, so one day that I wasn't drinking was this next day in Nuremberg. I like, went out and did stuff. And my dad.
That was a trial, I'll tell you that much. Yeah.
Well, the reason that my dad and I went was that my dad wanted to go because my papa had been in Nuremberg during the Nuremberg trials. Like he was like when he was like 18 or 19.
Wow.
Driven a car for like some dignitary in Nuremberg like just after the war had finished. And so my dad was always really interested in going, and I was like, well, I was sort of interested. We kind of went. And then I remember, so we spent a whole day at like the Nuremberg Trials Museum and like went and did some stuff, and my dad went and saw some of the other like bits about there and stuff. And then I remember coming back and being like, thinking about all these horrific things that had happened and all these things that my papa would have seen, and then thought, at least he wasn't there for Scotland versus Hungary.
Yeah, that was a low point.
That was the low watermark.
Oh yeah, it was so got
Anyway,
after
good,
that. Anyway,
good trip, but
great trip.
awful football.
That was one of the best nights ever, though. That one in Cologne. I'm glad you were there for it. It was nice to share it with you.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Did you have some transport issues getting here today?
I got on a train from London at 7:30. There wasn't any issues, but it was just a
shite.
smelly West Coast Avanti train.
It must be hard for you to advocate getting trains
It
and
is
planes
hard
and stuff
at
when they
times.
are shite.
You want a good train. You want to be like, oh, this is a good one you can get. I mean,
the argument, it's like the NHS. The argument's you want it to be better. You don't want it to just be disbanded or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
But aye, it's
Do you ever do what is it? There's like a new kind of middle thing where they go, like, oh, you can get a super premium or something. I can't remember what it's called.
aye,
what,
standard premium.
Like a slight
have you ever
upgrade.
done that?
I have actually once, and it was better.
It is always
I've never
better.
even been in first class. I think.
You just get. I got first class once. I'd done an advert for it's the LNER.
Yeah.
Because they need a Scottish person. It doesn't even go to Glasgow. It's the East Coast line.
Yeah.
But I got it, and then
They don't know the difference.
No, they don't. They generally don't. And then it ended up they never even used. So I got the money and it never got used.
Yeah.
And it was they just used Jason Cook for all of it because he was so good at
that's
it.
funny.
He pure loves trains.
And I was hoping to get because I was up really early. I was hoping to get a nap in the train, but that way when you do it and then you don't fall asleep,
You
it's
can't.
so annoying.
Terrible.
Because I was thinking it would be quite fun to just come and do the podcast. I mean, I wasn't just coming up for the podcast. I will explain that in a minute.
Right.
But I thought it'd be good to just come and like literally just sit here like a dad, like just like fall asleep, just the whole time. You guys just have a chat around me.
Because
I do
obviously
that quite a lot.
in the vein of the climate stuff, because you trained at 2 Germany as well, didn't you?
I took the train there. That was as quick as getting like Cologne was as quick as getting to Glasgow for London.
Yeah.
London
Really?
through to Brussels and then change at Brussels, have a nice Belgian beer, and then you get a train the next bit. There was loads of it's quite funny because we were in London, but there was like one England fan, like guy with an England shirt, and about 100 Scotland fans all on the Eurostar going over. Like
Really?
it's
Aye.
just Scotland fans every which
Everywhere.
way you
Yeah.
looked. It was mental that they had to like even put on like an extra fan park in Cologne because it was like
rumours spreading during the day of that second fan park.
That one we were in was fucking amazing, wasn't it?
but that was like
big
they were like,
promenade.
oh, there's an extra 20,000 Scotland fans. And everybody like there was loads of Switzerland fans that were saying to us like, why are there so many people here? Like they don't have tickets for the match. Why would you come? Just see what happens.
No Scotland, no party. So what are you doing up here then? Matt?
So it's my mate's, pretty much my best friend's 40th birthday party. But it happened, he turned 40 about 6 months ago. So, but he's organised a party at the last minute, and I was like, I felt like I have to show up,
Yeah.
but sort of begrudgingly.
You only turned 46 months ago once.
So but he's booked it like somewhere near sort of towards St Andrews, but not quite. I don't even know where it is. So I'm getting I literally
the town of St Andrews
aye.
in Fife, not
So it's
like
in-
an area of Glasgow called St Andrews.
No. It's like
Right.
and yeah. So I'm getting picked up, and this is what I didn't specify.
Yes.
So I'm getting picked up at Tops Tiles Drum Chapel at 5:30.
Oh, well, that's easier. That's closer.
Much
than,
closer, but then it's not close for him, is it?
No.
But
why was Tops Tiles used
Top
as
Styles. Top Styles is where I'm getting picked
That's
up.
like a local landmark.
The guy that's picking me up's girlfriend works at Top Styles Drum Chapel.
Nice. Shout out.
Shout out, yeah,
Shout
friend
out,
of the show.
Top Styles. We could get a disc. You could get a sponsor.
One of
Right.
Tamsin's
Sponsors.
brothers works at Tops Tiles as well, yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
In with the bricks there.
There you
Get
go.
some
they've got a good
tiles.
connection to this.
I
haven't
feel
they?
like this could be a potential sponsor.
You ever done any tiling?
None.
None.
I can't say I have.
No, I've not tiled.
Although weirdly, I was looking at a roofer today, and my mate is a roofer, and I once joined him up on a roof
really?
in Drum Chapel.
Just
as it
on a
so
jolly
happens.
or helping out.
I was just sort of helping him. I don't really think I'd done much, but it
A
was
roofer's mate.
just interesting to get that perspective. It gives you a different perspective on the
Do a
world,
bit
A
of
bird's
both.
eye perspective.
both literally and comparatively.
So I saw him at a 40th birthday party, but sort of, I need to get there, and then basically I'm there for like 24 hours, and then I'm getting the train back to. And if it wasn't one of my best mates, I'd
So where does this mate live?
piss off.
Does he live in St
He's in
Andrews?
fucking Clapham,
Oh, for fuck's sake.
London. Aye.
He's
But he's
up
up in Edinburgh. He's living in Edinburgh at the moment because he's having a midlife crisis. He's like the one mate that's not married or got kids or anything. Like that.
Right.
So he's like.
That's why he's having a big party.
He's having a
Just
big
for-
party because he's like, might be the only thing that
This
I
is my
ever
wedding day.
have, pretty much. Yeah, so that's why I'm here, because
Oh.
I'm basically saying might be the only thing that we ever do for him.
But this isn't the best man speech that you're preparing for.
It's good to
No,
know. It's
no.
good to know that's an
That's
option.
an option. Mark, right, a wee note of that one.
40th birthday. Okay. if I'm
Pretend
not-
it's your wedding.
Yes.
Get everybody to do speeches.
Set an alarm on your phone for when you're 40 and 6 months. Have a big party.
Yeah,
Vows
yeah.
to
So and then,
myself.
but he was like, so he only booked it a month ago, right? So he said a while ago. So he disappeared for his birthday. He went to like the other side of the world for his birthday because he's single and he can do that. And then he said, "Oh, can you hold whatever week this weekend was, last weekend in September or something, free?" That was it. Nothing.
Send
No.
in those save the date cards.
Yeah, pretty much. It was just a WhatsApp, like a save the date WhatsApp. But
Aye.
and then he's like, "It'll be somewhere between Glasgow and Edinburgh." And then a month ago he books it, and then I'm like, "The fucking trains are like extortionate now because you've booked it a month out." And he's like, "Oh, you should have booked it when I told you." I was like, "I've got a family, and there's kids involved here. I need to, I can't make decisions based on a whim like you." I was
He's
like,
having it in a town that doesn't even have a fucking train station, by the way. You got to get up at Lucas.
absolutely. I don't even know where it is. It's near
Andrews,
somewhere. It is near. I don't even know exactly. Cooper, I think, is the
All
closest
right, okay.
place.
They do have a train
You're
station.
not far. You're not far.
Lovely view of the Lidl from Cooper train station.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I said to him, I'm having my I was like in the WhatsApp group, I was like, just so everybody knows, I'm having my 50th birthday somewhere halfway between the capital of Uruguay and the capital of Chile in May of whatever year it is. It's not my birthday. Then can you just book accommodation now and your travel?
Yeah, fuck that.
I feel like even with the weddings and all that these days, like when people like they'll have a stag do abroad, or they'll have an abroad wedding.
You
and
need
all
to come
this.
out against. I think you maybe do mention that in the book.
I haven't mentioned it, but I'm going to need to go bigger on it.
Yeah,
to be honest, I need to
'cause
come really down on those people.
Of all the things that you could justify cutting out of your life entirely, surely
unless
continental
one of you lives.
I know
somewhere, but
somebody, a
stag
friend,
do. Absolutely.
friend of
Aye.
a friend, he's having his stag in fucking Brazil.
That's crazy.
That's
Insane.
I just say no to stuff like that now. I just genuinely go, that's a stupid idea. I'm not coming.
Yeah, that's a principled
And
stance.
hopefully people eventually kind of go, all right.
Yeah. So, what I want to ask you about, Matt, because I remember speaking to you about this, I think, after the show last time, but because obviously, so you're for Paisley-ish. I know we spoke about this when you're down in London, because you always just sort of say like
Sort of general. It was quite fun doing that gig in London because it was like, it's the only time that I've played to an almost
Scottish
only
audience.
Scottish audience.
Yeah.
That's
like
one or
going
two English people there, but
It's like
Yeah,
going
yeah.
out and doing the Rangers and Celtic bars in Vegas.
That's
I was like, I think there's a market here. You just write an hour of sort of London Scottish observations and just do that. And there's probably enough folk that you could kind of do it, like, I don't know, a couple of times a year.
you could probably do that, I would say. Aye, absolutely. But you're for that. And did you start comedy down south, or did you start it here?
No, I started a PhD at Strathclyde, and then about, I don't know,
In my
6.
stomach.
Aye.
Is that your tummy?
Still going.
I thought that was like a wee
There you go.
animal outside or something.
Sorry.
See if the mic's picked up.
Yeah, so I started a PhD at Strathclyde, and then about 6 months into it, I started Strathclyde used to do like a stand-up evening course.
Right.
All
Who taught it?
folk do it. Viv G taught
Viv,
it.
yeah,
Quite a
don't-
few
aye,
folk
aye.
did it. So I started that because I got a discount because I was a student at Strathclyde, and then
Aye.
I did that, and that got me started. But it was quite funny because then I wasn't even that. I mean, obviously it's your first gig. You're sort of like, it was fine, but everyone else was like people that much better than me, but they all stopped. Were like,
That is
I've
the secret,
done
isn't it?
comedy, and the secret's literally just do it again and again and again.
I can't imagine Viv taught you to pretend you're Trevor McDonald, did she?
No, it wasn't Trevor McDonald. It's good that you've picked that bit up because I had totally forgotten about that.
Do you know the reason I remember this? And that's because I
We
always
probably
use
should say he didn't look like Trevor McDonald when he was doing this.
No,
I always use this as an example of like how no matter what mad stuff you end up doing, there's always parallel thinking and weirdly, because at the time that year at the Fringe, you had a bit about Trevor McDonald and you also had a bin on stage.
Yes.
And our mate Ali Houston was doing a totally different show, but he used to come on with a baby strapped to him and he'd said the name of the baby was Sir Trevor McDonald and he had a wheelie bin in his show as well. And I'm like, what are they all?
These
It's like,
two
you get
fucking
these
hacks.
articles, it's like, this year the
The
trend
themes
seems
are-
to be...
Trevor McDonald and refuse.
And I'm like, do you know what I mean? Just no matter how like kind of like off the wall it is,
There's some references.
there'll
that I
still be
guess-
something that will be similar. Do you know what I mean? It's
that
weird.
is very specific. The fact that the
Yeah.
idea of both of those
Both
things
of them.
happening
It's
in the same
crazy.
years. I don't even remember what I found a book in a charity shop that was by. It was poems. That was it. It was poems about something.
And the other
then
bit I
I
always
read it
remember
out.
you say it, and I always did. Next thing because I always remember my dad, Robert Mugabe. Because you used to say your dad was Robert Mugabe.
And that was that went on for a while, and then he died, and I replaced him with climate change.
I think, I'm sorry if I made you do this in London, but I think you've got one of the best jokes I've ever written, the party popper one, which does appear in the book Hot Mess, available
I
in all
stuck
good
it in there
retailers.
because I was
Yeah.
like, "What? Yeah." I've seen other people sort of
Do you know the joke I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Mark?
of course. Which I remember you doing. You done it in that show because you
at
had
the end
bin.
of the show. The
Yeah.
the last bit of the show was doing it.
I guess we need to say the joke now.
If that's okay, but
13.
don't feel you have to.
About
About
my
your
dad.
dad.
My dad.
Classic Scottish dad stuff
Yeah,
as
very
well.
neurotic. The only way I can describe him to people is he's the sort of man who would open a party popper directly into the bin.
I think that is a perfect gag. It tells you so much.
It's the word directly.
Directly is
perhaps,
so
like,
good.
as well.
Zero spellage.
And it's genuine because my dad, I say genuine. Like he used to, like as soon as you'd opened your presents or like done stuff, he'd be like,
Big
I'd be like,
paper
"Where's
bag.
Dad gone?" And he'd come back in with a bin bag, like wiping it all
yeah,
up.
my dad does the exact same.
I'm getting there if I'm honest. I'm sort of like, yeah, we'll just put this in a pile over here.
It's no honeymoon period. Well, if anything, you're probably not having any of this shit lying about it at all, man. This is all
Then
wasteful plastics.
Try and me and my brother used to have a thing where we used, and this was before I was even into all that stuff. We used to try and wrap each other's presents in the worst thing possible. So I just like a wet towel. I'd wrap my brother's presents in and like hand him his presents in that, like just stuff that was lying about, like whatever was the closest thing.
Aye, I'm terrible at rapping, to be fair.
I could go on the best man's page.
Yes, yeah, there you go. That's an extra
very,
bit.
Yeah,
I've got-
sweet, relatable.
I've got a couple of bits. Don't know if any of them would work just now. One about how they're going to Seville. I mean, you do need the context. They're going to Seville for like a honeymoon, well, a pre-honeymoon, like the week after.
Uh-huh.
She's from Derry, but lives here. And so then I'm still talking about. I was basically saying going to Seville, which I think is an odd choice. Very famous for the fruit. It means that they're having to stay in an orange lodge,
Yeah.
which I think kind of works.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'll work
it's
out
not bad.
the wording
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it
yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, and all the other jokes are far too specific to
Yeah, to do on here. That's
do
fair.
anywhere. What did you do? Did you write it together when you did Stevie's?
Kind of wrote our own version
and
and
then
sort
came
of,
together and sort of meshed them
Merged it.
together.
yeah.
Did you feel a lot of pressure?
Yeah. More pressure than any gig, really, I would say.
Yeah.
Because it's just, it's
It's
a lot of pressure on
somebody's-
their day. But the way I said, and I think this is why I felt happy afterwards as well, is like, because ultimately with these things, it's like when you go on a works night out, you just don't want to be the person everybody's talking about after. And so see if the speech
I've
isn't...
been to that. I've been to the.
Oh my God, I
Yeah.
can't believe you said
Because also
that.
people were telling us anecdotes like that before we'd done it. And
Yeah.
I was trying to be chill about it, and they were like, "Oh God, I was at a wedding 2 years ago. Best man was awful. you know,
Some of them on YouTube, you're like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah,
you
I've
know.
not done that. Oh, I've not.
Oh, like
Oh,
some
yeah.
of them are like, especially if you type in Scottish, so some of the shit they say,
so
the
world
wives on it are
leaders in
terrible.
bad best man speeches.
But you're like, oof,
I
that's
can't
not-
imagine.
But you actually done that at Strathclyde then?
Yeah, and then I probably did about 3 or 4 years in Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
and did the Fringe 2010, 2011, 2012, all with Gad as well.
Aye.
And then I
But
moved
doing
to
like two or
London.
three handers
Like
together?
a four-hander with Mitchell. The first year was me, Mitchell, Gad, and someone else.
Wow.
I'll mention afterwards.
Okay.
And then me, Gad, and James Kirk did one, and then
Yeah.
me and Gad did one, and then I moved to London end of 2012. Basically, I got to the final of the BBC Comedy Awards, and also finished my PhD in like the same week,
Wow.
and then like moved to London to do like that or the last bit
Must
of
have
that,
been
but got a
exciting.
job as well and stuff.
Must have been exciting, all that happening.
It was kind of it was a bit mental. It was a bit
Who
much,
won it
if
the
I'm
year
honest.
that you were in?
Lucy Beaumont won it.
Okay, fair
Right,
enough.
yeah,
Final.
doing great, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the following year, I did the Comedy Zone with her in Edinburgh as well.
Aye.
Yeah, and then went back to so it was in another couple of years. But but basically, I've always done comedy with like a full-time job, working as a climate researcher.
Yeah.
I've always had. I think it's my dad. I think it comes from my dad. That sort of like never do too like risk stuff too much.
Yeah.
So I'm like, comedy's quite a risky thing to kind of go like to just be like, I'm confident enough that I can literally make a living off of my personality. I'm like, and so it's taken me like, I don't know, like 16 years to get to a stage where I'm now even just like doing a bit more comedy than I am research.
Yeah.
sort of
Whereas
stuff.
the climate, I mean, not to be too pessimistic, Matt, but that's not getting fixed anytime soon.
No.
You
So
when
more-
people
there's-
talk
the
about the
work's
comedy
coming in.
circuit dying, but what's going to go first? You know?
So everybody's going to start moving into climate climate
Yeah.
stuff. I
Well,
think.
there's a few. I don't know.
Yeah.
Call out some other comics.
Some people sniffing out the doors.
Yes. But so what actually first made you then like to like decide to start talking more about climate stuff in comedy?
I ran out of material. That genuinely. Like I think people think it's more like, oh, he really. I did obviously care. Like I was doing it every day for a job, and I was like, how can I talk about this? But I was like, people don't really want to hear about this. And I tried. So I did my first show, 2015, was the Robert McGabby show with the
Yes.
Ben in the party popper at the
Great
end
show.
and all that stuff. Trevor McDonald. The next show was mental. Far too complicated. It's the
Because
old-
that last one was, pretty straightforward.
I took it further the next year.
Interesting.
And without the time to make it good.
Yeah.
And it was fine. It's the only one that's filmed. If you ever want to go on, I think it's on Next Up Comedy. You
aye.
can watch it. There's some bits in it that are good. There's some like routines that are good, but as a show, it's pretty and it's mental.
Yeah.
Gad's in that as well. There's clips and
Oh, is
there's
it?
some other stuff at Josie Long's in it. There's a few people in it. Like it's so complicated. I will not even bother explaining.
Yeah.
And basically, I did that show, and I tried to talk about climate change in it a little bit, but
Yeah.
like just in a really sort of like I'm not gonna, kind of silly, and I kind of like it was a theme, and I talked about it, and there's like one or two jokes, or maybe like two jokes in it, and I got a review in the list that year, 2 stars, that was like, he didn't talk about anything of any substance whatsoever. It was like watching a children's TV presenter and something else. Like just like all the other reviews were like 3 stars and like 1 or 2 good ones, but most of them were like, I think it was fair enough, to be honest, because it was probably a sort of fine, okay show. And then, but one pretty bad review. And then off the back of that, I was like, right, I'll write one more show. So this is like my 3rd show in a row. I was like, I'll write one more show. And if it goes well, I'll keep doing comedy. And if it goes badly, I'll stop doing comedy. And I'm just going to write an hour lecture about climate change and see and that's it. I will commit to like the heaviest possible show for an
Yeah.
hour.
How's
And
this
I
for
See me getting
substance?
something deep.
Yeah. I was like, if you want substance, I'll give you substance. So I did that, and it took a whole year. Like I started quite early, and I worked really hard at it because I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I had to work out how. One of the things I had to change was like, because my persona had to change, because I had to be like, I genuinely know about this and genuinely care about this, I can't be like a really weird guy coming on doing stuff. So like all my persona changed, and then the kind of things you can get away with and the kind of things you can talk about.
These stats
had
seem
to
plausible,
change.
but I don't think his dad is Robert McGavin.
Yeah, like I don't know what to believe.
I love the idea of someone loving that first show and then missing the next one and be like, I love it. You got to see this guy. It's crazy.
No, there was folk that came back and were like, "Oh, are you going to do the McGavie stuff again?" And I was like, "Yeah, there wasn't a lot of money in it, if I'm honest." Yeah, it is funny. There's some people that still like message me going like, "Oh, that was a great show." You're like, cool.
I always, because I remember gigging you, I think you done Manchester once for the XS Malaki, and I always remember you had the bit about your mum used to always call it Boots the Chemist.
Oh yeah. That's funny. Yeah, there was a bit in that show. That was like, there was like 2 or 3 like just general jokes at the start of it, and that was one of them. My mum always called it Boots the Chemist. I was thinking, literally, me and my brother always talk. On the way here, I was walking through the merchants. I met my brother for lunch. Rolling through the Merchant City, and I was thinking about mum, because it was a while ago when my mum was like, we're going out for, I don't know if your mums ever do this as well, going out for dinner, and she goes, we're going to a teppanyaki restaurant, and I was like, what's that? She goes, you can just see the panic in her face. It's teppanyaki. Like, she'll double down on the thing and just say the same word again and again, as if you're like, yeah, but you don't know what that means, do you? And she's like, it's a teppanyaki restaurant. Cool. And puts it, and she'll just, there's mums
I'm
have
not gonna
always
lie,
got,
I don't know what teppanyaki restaurant
no,
is.
it's like
I've seen it
Japanese
written on
sort
the
of
side of restaurants.
type of Japanese restaurant.
Teppanyaki.
Sounds right enough.
She did the same thing again with like a thing. She like, my brother and I used to live in a flat in Glasgow, and she bought us some stuff for the flat, and she was like, I bought you this like game, but it's like, it's more ornamental.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's an Awali game. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she was like, it's an Awali game. And it's like some like weird.
The man in the shop said that's a really good game.
I still don't know what it is. I think it's like an African game with wee balls or something, but she doesn't know what it like. No. You can't just say a thing because somebody's told you a thing. You need to actually work out what it is if you're going to explain it. Yeah. Anyway, Boots the Chemist, she's still very much.
That's I like that.
She also says the word. She says potatoes instead of potatoes. People just have weird.
They have their ways.
Weird quirks.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were talking about
doing comedy.
You had to do more substance. You didn't know how.
Yeah, sorry.
To do it.
So then I did that first show about climate change in 2017. But it took about a year of like absolutely dying, like properly had to die to work out how to do it. Like,
and what was the key? Would you have said to kind of making it work?
I had to work. The way that I made it work in the end was I had to basically write 2 shows. I had to write a show as a climate person, and then I had to step away from it, and then I had to come back. I had to give it a bit of time and then come back purely on a comedy perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I had to basically, because the problem was that sometimes I'd be trying to write jokes about it, but I'd be like, oh, I really care about this thing, or I get angry about stuff or whatever, or I'd be trying to kind of write the subject matter, but then I'd be trying to think of jokes at the same time. Yeah. And I realised I have to do like 2 separate things here completely, and that wasn't something that I'd ever done. So I basically had to kind of decide what I was going to talk about and write that, and then go away and then come back and be like, all right, I'm just as a comedian just punching this up as if it's something else. And that
was writing the book similar, or were you able to?
Because
you do manage to do both. It's a big ask, but like it is really, obviously there's been so much research and there's loads of data in it and stuff, but there's jokes on every page.
It's a really funny book. I loved it.
It is like someone's taken the template of a book and then put like, like at school when you had the OHP or whatever, and you'd put like a laminate sheet. It's like the jokes have just been pressed on top of it.
Well, thanks. That's exactly what I was hoping.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
I know, it's great.
Because book, like, nobody wants to read a book about climate change apart from absolute nerds. That was
the fact that I've read it and enjoyed it speaks volumes, because I really struggle reading fucking anything.
And I put it off for ages because I bought it when it came out.
Yeah.
And then it was only when you came on last year that I read it, because I'm like, I was scared. I was scared. I'm like, I need to get into that, but I don't know.
I get it.
I don't know if I want to know how bad it might be.
Yeah.
And then I read it and I'm like, oh well. this bit about Busted's really funny.
It is that way where you're just like, hopefully it keeps people. You're like, oh, but I do want to know what the next joke is, but also I don't want to know what the next horrible bit is.
I know.
But it's it's a tricky balance doing that, and I think. But it's it's an effective way of getting people to do it. The problem that I've had with the book was just I don't like Waterston's like put it in the environment
in the nerd section.
The nerd section, and I'm like, but that's not. They've got books.
Put it in
It's
the
not
humour.
for them. It's for the. It's for the.
Yeah.
You should just go in on just when you're passing and just move it
Move it
around.
about, yeah. It's for the Stu McFerrin. I don't know what's there should be a section. It's just like
next to the
guys that have interests in some stuff,
calendars
but
and the decks
aren't
of cards and all that.
Right.
yeah,
The tote bags.
yeah. I don't know. So it's a tricky one that.
I know, but no, it's brilliant, man. And it's funny as well because like loads of the jokes, like I've been howling at some of them, and it's funny because I know you said that a lot of times you're having to do these corporates now, and it's they can sometimes be the tough audiences to win over.
Yeah,
because you've got that TED talk online, and I'm like, man, this is a tough crowd because I was laughing more at these jokes than the Matt's getting.
Yeah. There's a TED, so it's hard. I've not got much stuff online because I'm useless. That's what my plan for the next year is to get less useless like that. But one of the things that you can find online of a set is there's a TED talk. The context of it, because this is all my gigs now are just like this.
Once again, you're in the nerd section.
Yeah, exactly. But there was maybe like 10 folk all giving TED, like, I don't know, what is it, 10 or 15 minute TED Talks or something like that. So there's 10 of them happening in a room. The one before, and they're all serious apart from mine. And the one before mine was a woman talking about sexual assault at music festivals. And then it was
With
like...
gags or?
No.
Gags.
Serious, heavy. And then somebody came on and went, okay, thank you very much. Next up is Dr. Matt Winning. And I had to come... See, what you're watching is me... Like, not even just like a kind of normal room, like a room that's
This
like...
is -5. This
-5, yeah. And so the first 5 minutes of that is me just trying to get it back to like 0 and then try and win like... and I feel like by the end of it, it's sort of like that, but it's a weird one because it's, I don't know, like 30,000 folk have watched that video, but you're just like...
It's almost a metaphor for trying to stop global temperatures rising. This is a harder task.
And some other speaker's got to come on and do a thing about famine and everyone's pissing their sides laughing because you've primed them to laugh. We have got a captive, not in a sort of literal sense, but hopefully people are listening and enjoying it. And I think that we would be remiss not to, because we did kind of try and ask you some serious questions on the live show, and then we quickly realised this might get depressing. But in this setting, I think is a bit is better for a conversation about it. Because the one thing that I asked you on the night, because I was curious about this, and you do sometimes hear people sort of kind of. Sometimes jokingly, sometimes not, saying this thing about, if global warming happens and we get a couple of degrees, warmer, will Scotland not just be class?
Yeah. Which is a fair enough take, given that we live in Scotland, and also, it's a bit route one, if you know what I mean, but also scientifically inaccurate.
Right.
We need to debunk some myths today, Matt.
So why is it inaccurate?
So one is to do with the uncertainty around temperature change, right? So will Scotland get warmer during the summer? Probably a little bit, but you're going to be dealing with a lot of other shit on top of that. I mean, this summer's been terrible as well, so it's not like you'll definitely always get that. But then when it does rain, for instance, during the summer, you're going to get potentially, things that rainfall that we can't really cope with. So for every 1 degree of warming, you get about 7% more rain. And Scotland's pretty wet. I mean, so the joke, I think I probably did this joke at the other thing. Yeah, but about how, so Glasgow's one of the top cities at risk from flooding because it's already wet. And I was like, so wet are going to add an extra wet to them and make it scientifically accurate.
Good Clydebank boys as well.
Yeah.
But that's
more extreme, right, rather than hotter.
But so one example is, did you ever see the film, and I'm trying to talk about this in the new show that I'm writing at the moment, but it's a complex one to talk about. The film, The Day After Tomorrow, right, where it gets like really like the whole world like gets frozen or something, right? So what that is the Atlantic meridional overturning current. So basically, the Gulf part of the current in the Gulf in the Atlantic, right, might slow down. So you know how Scotland, but also I mean Europe in general, they get pretty mild winters. Right? So where we are compared to the same latitude across, so Canada, Alaska, right, Moscow are so much colder during the winter than we are, right, and that's because of this
Gulf Stream thing that you see on the weather.
Yeah, and it keeps us warm during the winter, and so but with the amount of melting water from the Arctic, that current slowing down and may well slow completely and stop at some point, or at least slow right down, which will stop the winters being warm in Europe and in Scotland. So Scotland, Edinburgh is the same as like parts of Alaska, and it basically will go potentially winters will go from being like -1 or -2 here to like -40.
Oh my god!
Like so, and like none of Scotland is designed. None of our buildings, nothing is designed.
The beast from the east fucked us for what? 2
Yeah,
weeks?
yeah.
Shit.
So like potentially in 30, 40 years time, maybe it'll take longer. It might happen. So it was so uncertain. But the actual state of our climate in this country might change forever.
Because of that Gulf Stream
because of the Gulf Stream. And so there's these sort of, we would call them like tipping points
in
the climate system, where you change from like one state that we're used to like a completely different state.
Fuck.
And so there's that on top of like the more rain the more heat and the heat waves and stuff like that.
We could get more rain and worse winters. That is enough for us all to stop right now and fucking sort that shit out.
So I don't know if that extra 1 or 2 degrees during the summer's worth -40 during the winter. that would be massive.
Oh my god! And so that could happen tomorrow, or it could happen in 100 years.
Yeah. But there was a paper that came out this year that said the midpoint of this sort of range might be 2050. Previously, they thought it won't happen this century. It would happen at some point in the future. But sort of some more studies have suggested it might be a lot closer.
Oh my god!
Than we think.
Wow,
it's terrifying. I certainly didn't know that.
Yeah, and I don't think most people do understand
people should know.
that. No. And obviously there's just the kind of, Scotland's probably going to get a bit less than other places, but I think Scotland tends to care about other places around the world.
Yeah, totally.
And, so there's sort of the justification of like, Scotland's got connections with like Malawi and stuff, like loads of stuff like that, where you're like, I mean, these places are going to be absolutely
they'll be toast.
Done for with climate change. And it's just that sort of like, I get it is a good joke to be like, be a bit warmer, but also like, it's not actually
complicated than that. Because I actually did think as well. I was like, well, maybe we'd be like, because we don't get that extreme weather, we might end up being like one of the only hospitable places in the world. And but then maybe no, if they get fucking -40 fucking winters.
Yeah, well, you don't really know. Like, you can't really say for certain with any of this stuff.
No,
but things will move. So like, you'll get like be able to grow stuff in Scotland because it'll be a little bit warmer that you previously maybe weren't able to grow here and stuff like that. So there will be like some small benefits compared to other places, but overall it's going to be pretty much a bit of a shit show.
How because there's a few kind of big questions come up. Obviously, one that you touch on in the book, now being a dad yourself, is about kids and stuff like that. And you had a really good answer to this, because I was sort of saying, and I do think, and see when you think about that, it's like, by 2050, so you're like, God, do I want to bring a kid into the world and subject them to this, apocalypse that they're going to have to deal with or whatever?
But then, don't know, you might already have a few kids in the world already.
Well, potentially, I don't know. Please don't write in. But do you know what I mean? Like, so there's part of you thinking, well, God, like, and sometimes when I see folk, like I went to school with, and they're just like living their lives as if nothing. You're like, God, do you know, read the news and what's coming, and it's so much uncertain. But then I guess like your argument in the book's kind of the opposite, I suppose, in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, trying to simplifying it down is like, if the best thing you can do for your child's future is to not have a child, then it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? Why are we doing any of this? And people have had children through wars and other things. Like I get that you want to, maybe not, think about things and work out what's right for you. But I don't think and that's just my view on it, is that climate change isn't a reason to not do stuff. It's a reason to do stuff.
Yeah.
But also it is still scary. It's still terrifying.
Aye. What's your view on like because there's all these sort of people think we can fix it. We, like technocrats, like probably like your sort of Elon Musk's to an extent or whatever. They feel it can all be fixed.
I was literally watching on the train up this morning. There's a new Netflix documentary with Bill Gates.
Oh, yeah,
and one of the episodes is about climate change, and he's written a book about climate change. I'm like, the guy. I mean, he's a nice guy and he's well-meaning and everything, but he also like doesn't actually know anything about Bill Gates. He fucking knows about computer chips.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But it's good that he's interested in trying to do stuff. Yeah. But he's got a view that it's like, we just need to get technologies to fix this. And I mean, that is...
What would that look like though? What kind of...
Quite boring stuff. Like there's a bit like about this like cement industry. We need to change how you make cement, and that means like changing some of the inputs that we put in. It's like really specific stuff there where you're like, we need new technologies across like lots of sectors. Electric cars, obviously, and like, but we also is that like transport's a good one. So you need electric cars, but you also need it'll be much easier to achieve your goals if we don't also like increase the amount that people drive and have bigger cars and have more car. Like you could kind of do a bit of like a technology change that'll help, but also try and reduce, have better public transport or get cultural change. Like both of those things, in my opinion, have to happen. And people are often much more on like one side or the other.
Aye.
And I'm having just looked at the data. It's like, if you've got two solutions, I think we're going to achieve things much better by having both of those things do kind of a bit each.
Absolutely.
Rather than rely on like, we're just going to get technologies to fix this, or we're just going to like stop going out and doing stuff. Like you kind of need a bit of both, I think, and use all the tools that you've got in your drawer.
Totally, because I think there's like another sort of dichotomy between the two is like the sort of emphasis on individuals to do their part, whether it's putting your stuff in the right bins or whatever. Although I believe you've got a take on that as well.
Oh, recycling. Well, read the book about that. People people always come up to me and talk about that.
That's one thing I remember, even though it's really bad that that's one of the main things I remember. It's just me wanting to absolve myself of any personal responsibility. That shouldn't be the main take home.
So many people have that though. So many people like,
I do think really of you whenever I do the recycling though.
Yeah, because like you just so recycling's a waste of time, and I'm like, yeah, pretty much, yeah. Well, and people are like, wow, great, that's what I've taken away from this.
Yeah, yeah. Why is it a waste of time?
But it's just, I don't mean it's a waste of time. It's just one of the smallest things that you can do. Yeah, you could do all of your recycling for fucking like 20 years, and you could take a couple of flights to I don't know, Thailand or something like that, and back, and that would would be the same equivalent sort of thing, like.
Or really, you don't even need to be taking the flights. The flights are happening anyway, I suppose.
Yeah, but they're only happening because you're deciding to take them. What is the causality here?
Yeah. Supply and demand.
It's one of the ones.
It's one of the ones.
It is. It's economic. Comes back to economics.
Milton Friedman and fucking Keynes or whatever.
It's a good title for a book.
But I do get annoyed though, like, because, and I think a lot of people do feel this, and as maybe you feel it as an excuse. You're like, well, what's the point? Because these big corporations are burning fuel and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there isn't enough of an emphasis, or like the party thinks maybe they've tricked us on. I think we need to do these wee things to absolve these big companies of having to take responsibility themselves.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that happening. Yeah,
aye,
and it's much easier to get a handful of companies or or organizations to do something than it is to get like literally billions of people all individually to do stuff. So like it makes more sense to look at this, what we would call the supply side solutions.
Yeah.
So like who's actually supplying this stuff rather than all of because the demand's so diffuse in the sense that it's all of us having to make individual decisions. We're not like a big gang. I mean, I guess if you had a big union of folk or everybody's getting together, and that's why it's good. Like, that's why I think actually groups are really important. So groups of people doing stuff. So I always say to people, like, it's good to try to look beyond, like, into your community and stuff like that, and think a bit beyond yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't need to like go and join like Just Stop Oil if you don't want. I mean, feel free to if you want to, but you don't necessarily like find the thing that works for you or the people that work for you, or start your own thing that's a bit different or whatever. But if you can come together with other people, then you've got a much bigger. You can make bigger changes,
Totally,
rather than just worrying about it yourself. Because and it also helps if you've got other people, because you're not just sitting worrying about yourself and internalizing it all, and also being like, I'm a bad person, because you're not a bad person. It's just, this is the world we exist in, and we will only begin to feel better about ourselves if we start doing stuff together. I think it's very, not to get too philosophical, but it's very reminiscent of the human condition in general, is that I think the more that we're individualized and the more that we think about ourselves as individuals, the more bad we feel and the more guilty we feel about stuff, because we're not sharing in humanity and stuff like that. That's probably the sort of happiest thing I'm ever going to say.
Yeah, but also it goes hand in hand, I think, with like with everything of like things are getting more individualistic in general, and you know, as we go online and everything, everyone's very engrossed in their own little worlds and echo chambers and their own lives and everything. There is less of a community spirit in general, isn't there? Like, do you manage to feel positive and hopeful about maybe how, like, you know, because I think a lot of people feel helpless that, you know, it's all the 1% and these big oil companies that are fucking everything and they're not going to change. Do you see them making meaningful change?
I do. The writing is on the wall for the oil and gas, like the bad guys in this situation. Like it's gonna happen, but it's just the time of it. Like I'm certain that the world will change and go on the path that it needs to go on, and that will happen this century pretty much. It's just whether it'll happen enough. The sooner it happens, the less suffering will happen across humanity, essentially. And that's where I'm less hopeful about how urgent people understand what we need to do, and like this the way we talk about it and the way it's sort of still framed in society. And I get it, because it's fucking hard to think about every day.
Because it should be like the number one story in the news every day, and it just isn't.
And that's what folks say, and but also I'm like, I have to, because I think about this every day, and I've started the new show that I'm writing is just me talking about how I've got basically all I do is like a kid, and I look after him and I think about climate change, and that's it. I've got a sort of pit of despair in my stomach and the Paw Patrol theme in my head. That's my entire life.
And yet you always seem to be, to at least on the surface to me, as someone that knows you casually, you're a very happy-go-lucky, chipper guy.
You think?
And you supports
so.
Mirren.
I'm fan, right? Well, he got into Europe this year, so happy-go-lucky this year. Fucking Celtic fans. I mean, it's hard to be like so positive. I do feel it's sort of like you have to. The purpose of life is to try. Like, it's to do stuff. It's to take, like, the worst thing you can do is be like, oh fuck, things are bad, and not do something about it. It's the same with most things. Like, if you've got whatever, problems, or like not taking action is the worst thing that you can do, because it just gets worse and spirals out of control. The only thing that you have as an individual is to think about, well, what can I do, like, and start doing some things. And it's not like you're going to be like, oh, the world's going to be absolutely fine, but at least you're like, well, I'm doing stuff. I'm kind of actively taking part in moving us in the right direction, even if it's just like, but yeah. And then sometimes you're like, well, you worry because it's like the scale of it's so big, and you're like, something else. Like the wildfires in Canada last year happened, and they emit the same as like a small country, and that's climate change causing more climate change. And that's going to keep, spitting. So you're like, we're already fighting against, but you just have to kind of keep going to the grind.
Because it does feel, I feel sometimes like you talk about the human condition and stuff, and I sometimes feel like, God, this is just like up here on a mass scale of like us all putting off our homework to the night before.
That's how I've described it before as well. It's basically just like, sort of, we wait until the last minute, and then we're like, right, we need to cram, we need to do this now, and then it's always a bit late. We'll never let things get terrible, but we'll also not, like, we've all done this. You just kind of
totally
just human nature, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a tricky thing to get past.
I know. And I suppose like you talk about the urgency, and that's why like you get your like CRM, Extinction Rebellion, and Just Stop Oil and all that. And
they're the nerds in the class that have actually done the
Yeah.
homework.
But it's weird because even that, and even like
Can we get the exam today? They're like, they want it now. You're like, no, mate, come on.
You forgot to give us our homework.
Yeah,
miss.
fuck's sake,
Fuck
guys.
off.
But I get a bit annoyed at like the reaction to them, and you know even like Greta Thunberg and stuff like that. Because like, look, these people are obviously right.
Yeah.
They're like what they're doing. They're trying to stop an extinction.
Yeah.
They're trying to, you know, we all know this needs done, but they're going, well, I can't get to work because the fucking.
As if that's a bad thing to rebel against. Extinction.
I know. Like I don't like these extremists. I'm on the fence about extinction. But what do you feel about like? Do you think they do more harm than good sometimes in terms of the public perception, or what do you?
Yeah, it's
reckon with them?
interesting. I've tried to kind of read up a bit about it this year because it's not something that I'm that much of an expert in. But I try. You get asked loads of questions like, so when you work in climate change, because I'm an expert in like one like specific bit.
Aye.
But when you go out and talk about it and like talk, you know, whatever, people ask you questions about loads of stuff. So I've had to go.
You're
out
not
and,
like a
like,
strategist for fucking how to protest.
not
and shit.
exactly,
Aye,
yeah.
aye.
But I've had to kind of read a bit about it to be able to just because you get asked stuff about everything. And it's interesting because it sort of goes back to like other movements that have happened in the past and that all have used those sort of same
Free Britney,
tactics.
etc.
Not the island, but
If Britney Spears was going to freeze to death, we'd all do something about it.
get a jacket on her. The purpose is to piss people off. What surprises me every time is that people get more pissed off.
Yeah.
And haven't worked out that that's what they're trying to do.
It's like the joke of
Yeah.
the Fringe Award. That's not even funny.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. And you're like, have you not worked this out yet?
It's like when people moan about people striking at inconvenient times. You're like, yeah,
What is-
dummy.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
This is the purpose of this. And I don't. It's funny how people still just don't quite understand that
Yeah.
they're trying to annoy you
Yeah.
because that's.
And also,
way
it's
to
just
get
generally
attention.
seen as a bad thing in this country sometimes of like, you know, the bloody do-gooders.
Yeah, people
Doing
doing good.
Why would what on earth are you on about?
Yeah. I know people just kind of, and I get it. It is a bit like it can feel a bit annoying, like people, but also that's like the least worst thing you can be is like a bit annoying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but actually try to do something.
And I suppose their arguments like, well, if you think this is inconvenient, wait till there's fucking -40-degree winters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's meant to. I remember like people complaining about stuff like that, but also I couldn't get. There was one year where I couldn't get like. They were like, oh, you know, you can't get on the trains and stuff like that. I couldn't get on the train out of London one year because the train tracks were too hot.
Aye.
Like because they were like the tracks were literally melting because it was the hottest that it had been. We couldn't cope with it. And you're like, that was inconvenient trying to do that, but you don't talk about like you're not having a conversation about that because it's not a thing that you kind of see or that you can blame on somebody that easily. And that's why climate, it's just such a hard thing to get people to talk about and to kind of think about because it's not that obvious. Like if there was just a few guys that were doing it and we knew what their names were and we could, like, it'd be much easier to solve. That's
Faceless corporations.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
That's always happening.
Get Derek, go and get him.
Do you think this might be like again one of these questions that's like obviously not in your realm, but because to me I'm like when you just look at the way politics works and how you know it is between here and America and the rest of it, and you just go like the incentives that would be needed to make the radical change that I guess is necessary. It just does not look as though that's like the systems that we currently got are really capable of reacting to it. And it feels like basically like. Do we basically just need a revolution effectively? I mean,
if you wanted to solve it properly, then you need quite big systemic changes.
an overhaul.
We overhaul the financial system so that money, you literally can't put money into oil and gas or whatever, or it needs to be like, you need to start taxing shareholder, like people with money, billion, you need to have it put in a billionaire tax. Someone else suggested, a Nobel Prize winning economist has suggested that this year as well.
Wow.
Just need to tax them and spend the money on climate change.
Yeah.
You need to kind of basically go after the systems and put stuff in place that stops those systems from functioning in that circular pattern that makes them worse and worse. But doing that requires pissing off a lot of people with a lot of money and with a lot of power who are, dependent on the current system.
Yeah.
And then you've got issues like, so what fascinates me at the moment is that like there's a plan to do more good stuff, right? So you'll hear all the time about where we're up in renewables, we're doing, we're put more wind, more solar, we're going to get more electric vehicles and all that, and that's great. So we're doing more good stuff, but there's no talk, no chatter out in the public about like, well, how do you transition away from that? Like, how do you stop the bad stuff happening? How do you move away from oil and gas in a way that, the conversation literally becomes like, oh, Just Stop Oil are saying that you need to shut down oil tomorrow. Well, they're not actually saying that, but nobody's got a plan for like, how do we actually get ourselves off of the stuff that we're sort of addicted to that we need to stop.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky conversation, is how do you...
And who better to ask than a guy for Paisley?
How do you get off the hard stuff?
What's the methadone of...
We need to get more folk than Paisley involved. Pretty much. There's something to learn there.
Absolutely.
Oh dear.
But
Johnson, I'm from Johnson.
Okay.
No.
But no, that is no, I mean that's so true, and it's I guess and they keep just going by 2030, by 2035, and they keep pushing back these things, and
because that's greenwashing, right? Is that the same thing?
Yeah, and people. So one thing that's happened with greenwashing is a lot of people are talking about, well, we've set a target for 2050, right? So they'll go, we've got a net zero, and like companies will be like, we're going to go net zero by 2050 or whatever. And it's good, and it has to happen, but none of that, like, there's different ways of getting to the end point. And so the transition actually matters, because if you do nothing, if you just keep keep emitting until 2040 and then start doing some work, the actual amount of emissions is considerably, like, basic maths tells you that the area under the graph is the amount, right? So if it's a straight line, then that's a lot less under the graph than if it's a big curve that that doesn't go down straight away.
Yeah.
So actually the transition, how we get there is the most important part. It's not the end point. You have to get to the end point, but like we're not having a conversation about what are we doing in within the next 5 years or the next 10 years.
Totally.
And people are pushing it off, but that conversation isn't as important as the one about what are we doing today. And so we have to have a plan for the next 10 years. What are we doing to get rid of stuff in the next 10 years? What's the plan to get more stuff? What are you as a company doing or whatever? But one of the tricky elements that you've got then, that I guess from a geopolitical point of view, is that you have dropping oil and gas demand globally, right? So oil and gas demand is going to go down eventually to zero. Who controls the oil and gas that we have? And so you had a case where most of it used to be like international companies, international oil companies, so like Shell, BP, all the kind of big ones, Exxon and stuff like that. Now it's kind of shifted, so they're less of the picture, and more comes from like nation states. So like Saudi and
China
is for a bit, and UAE and some of the like Gulf states, and that's different because you've got one thing that's based on shareholders and money over here, and then you've got another thing that's basically countries doing stuff, and a lot of the cheap oil and gas is in like Saudi in comparison to like Australia and Canada, where it's harder to get oil and gas out. The price of the oil and gas in those countries is going to be higher. So the first ones to kind of drop out of the market will be the expensive ones.
Yeah.
And eventually, if we just went like gung-ho with it, you'd be left with basically all the oil and gas in the world being controlled by a few countries.
That sounds dangerous.
In which case, which is why, you need to kind of have a plan in place domestically to be like, well, how do we have our own energy supply and be able to do stuff whilst also getting rid of oil and gas? And like, it's just such a tricky thing to balance, and so there needs to be conversations about this, and there just isn't at the scale.
And you always hear about these developing countries like that. Well, we've not got to the point yet where we've industrialised enough or whatever, like we have in Britain and America and all that. And so, well, why can we not use all this stuff like yous have done to get there?
Yeah, just absolutely fair enough point.
Yeah, I guess.
And so unless we decide to help them, then in my opinion, they can mostly do what they like. In which case, we should be doing more quicker to get rid of our own stuff. If you're talking about what we would call like equity consideration, like do you care about equality between countries and stuff like that? And again, that's such a hard conversation
I know.
to have.
And this obviously mainly talking about oil and gas. Where does like food and meat consumption
That's
and all
kind of
that
the
come
other
into
thing.
this?
Yeah. That's kind of the other. Maybe like quarter, like about roughly, you're talking about 3/4 comes from fossil fuels, and then about 1/4 comes from food and agriculture. Although a lot of that food and agriculture is fuels that are used in the agricultural industry and stuff like that.
Right.
But yes, but you've got a substantial kind of amount. Maybe you're talking like 15% if you get rid of the fossil fuel bit, but it comes from like what we eat, and so that's something that I think we as individuals can do stuff about. Tricky things then you've got like the farming industry and stuff, and there's like people that are reliant on certain products, and you go, well, we need to transition these things away, and that's one of the hardest ones that I've found is like, you want to protect farmers and be like, you don't want people to just lose their livelihoods immediately, but also if it starts becoming -40 in Scotland, all of their crops are going to disappear anyway. So they're kind of fucked either way a little bit. And so there's really hard conversations there about, well, what do you do about agricultural production?
Farming, other shit.
No more farmers from 2050.
I like farmers. Yeah, I mean, but I've tried to, you try and do what you can, I think, again. And also, you do get people that are like very hardcore, like, you need to go vegan tomorrow and stuff like that. And great if you can, but also I think just doing the kind of bigger stuff, like trying to reduce like beef consumption is kind of one thing I've done.
Switch to chicken.
Chicken's much better.
That's a catchphrase we're trying to get going at the minute.
Switch to chicken.
Yeah.
I know, we were actually talking when we had Fernan, we were talking about, because I was getting slagged because I like lemon and herb, but I bet you that's better for the environment than hot and spicy. Is that?
I actually have a slide in the new show that's just the Nando's thing, and I'm like, if I was having to explain climate change,
We've been in a Nando's with you.
we have, yeah.
That was where we were,
maybe
yeah.
that's where I got the.
King's Cross.
And then I basically say like all of humanity, civilization, thrived and grew within the lemon and herb era.
That's what I'm saying.
But we're moving to extra hot, and not everyone can handle it.
Yeah.
And that's how, if I had to simplify climate change, it's to think about Nando's.
Much like humanity might be, we're running
Early
out of
exit.
time.
Yes, we are.
Can we just end
And
on
the
a hopeful
Patreon's the
note?
only way to keep this going.
This is true. Aye. Can we end on a hopeful note, Matt? Can you tell anyone, the people?
Germany was a laugh.
Funny. Good times, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hopeful. Yeah, I mean,
Or any advice for people? What can they do? Wee bits.
it's good to. I don't think hope isn't a good word.
Right.
I don't think. I mean, some people like it.
I think that sounds a bit like buying a lottery ticket or something.
Yeah, people kind of. It's a bit too airy fairy. Like, just if you care about it, which you should, do some stuff. Try and start doing stuff. But if you can do stuff with other people, I think that's an important thing to do.
Yeah.
So, like, also, the way to solve climate change is to do stuff with, locally within your community and stuff like that. But also, if climate change does get much worse, you'll also want other people in your community to be able to kind of, help each other and stuff like that. So I think that sort of level is what's missing. It's often like you're either talking about like individuals and like your carbon footprint, or we're talking about like Shell, right?
Yeah.
And what in the middle, there's some other stuff that the level of like community and local councils and like things that are happening in areas that you can comprehend. That it's not so big, but that it's at a scale that you can see a change in your area or whatever. That's the place to focus, and that's where the biggest wins are.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And I mean, that's be the change you want to see in the world. Who said that? Robert Mugabe, probably at some point. I don't know, but no, I think
That's his last words.
Sadly died of climate change.
But no, sadly we have run out of time. But Matt, thank you so much. We want to plug your book. It is brilliant. Hot Mess.
Yeah, big recommend.
Still available in Waterstones. You might need to go to the
Fantastic.
environment section for it, but it is available.
Yeah.
And have you got anything else to plug before we go?
From Tops Tiles.
Absolutely nothing. Tops Tiles.
Yeah, for all your tiling needs.
Switch to chicken.
Yeah.
Etc.
Switch to chicken. Tops Tiles. Buy my book.
Yes. Thanks so much. Before we go, just all the usual. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Send questions and like and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys, and we will speak to you very soon. And do your bit for the environment.
Yep. Cheers, Matt.
Cheers, boys.